Hi, and welcome to What the Phalange, the podcast where we watch every episode of Friends, discuss it, deconstruct it, and fan over it, one episode at a time.
My name is Emily, pronouns she and her.
My name is Quinn, pronouns zizier, or that they, them.
This week, we're talking about Season 1, Episode 5, the one with the East German laundry detergent. This episode aired on October 20th, 1994. It was written by Jeff Greenstein and Jeff Strauss, and directed by Pamela Fryman.
As we continue learning and fighting, this week we found an excellent short video that really explains one aspect of systemic racism. The video is part of the Explained series on Netflix and is entitled The Racial Wealth Gap. While the episode is specifically highlighting American systemic racism, Canadian history is not exempt, leading us to similar forms of systemic racism.
If you are a listener and believe that equality is the only solution towards dismantling systemic racism, this is a great video to watch. It pushes us further towards recognizing the ways in which equality will not do enough. We need justice and reparations. It's only 15 minutes long and well worth the watch.
Welcome back.
We're back!
Season 1, Episode 5.
How did you feel about this episode?
I really like this episode. Actually, it's probably one of my more favorite episodes.
Interesting.
Specifically, I specifically really like the story of the laundromat.
Okay. Yeah.
That's like definitely one of my favorite storylines.
It is cute.
And then I'm also a really big Janice fan.
Ah, okay, interesting. Yes, I love Janice too.
I love Janice.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't actually feel like this is one of my favorite episodes. Like, it's great, and there's definitely elements of it that I really like, but I wouldn't have classified it as my favorite episode. But then you just said Janice, and you're right. I really love Janice. So,
she's so good.
Yeah, she's so great. I don't know if I want to date Janice or be Janice, but I just want Janice in my life.
I don't want to be Janice. I think Janice is my true love.
Interesting. I would say Buffy is my true love, but all right.
That's fair.
Shotgun, Sarah Michelle Gellar.
I want to be Buffy and date Janice.
That would be the power couple of the century.
Oh, so good.
Anyways. But to be fair, I don't think Buffy could handle dating Janice.
Would not have that patience.
Right.
We wanted to start this episode with kind of going over the cold open like we normally do. But then we wanted to kind of break down this podcast into talking about the 3 different storylines that happen separately.
Yeah, okay, cool. So maybe we start with the cold open. What are your feels here? I've got lots of feels, and they're both good and bad. Because I actually think this is like kind of, I think it's, again, well scripted. I really like the cold opens that they've had so far in the show. I think they've been really well scripted. And they usually don't have anything else to do with the show. And it's just like banter between the 6 of them. That's like the majority of all the cold opens, is this kind of random banter between the 6 of them. And so I really like that aspect of it. And I think it happens a lot more often in season 1 that you see this kind of banter.
It makes me feel like our podcast should have a better cold open. You know?
Oh, damn. What are you thinking? Really good banter about why men and women are the same thing?
Well, that leads us into what we want to talk about in the cold open. So, again, we're going back to a cold open that it doesn't go with the rest of the episode, but it does highlight some really prominent themes in Friends as a whole in general. Mm-hmm. And that is the cis-sexism that exists within Friends. And what comes with cis-sexism is inherent transphobia.
Right. So just for people who are listening, if you're confused by what cis-sexism is, because I'm sure you've heard of transphobia, but what is specifically cis-sexism, or the difference between the two? So cis-sexism is pretty much the idea of almost disregarding the existence of trans people in conversations, in life, in media, in whatever it is. And so in this conversation, they're talking about men and women traits. So men can do this and women can do this, but specifically looking at it from an anatomical perspective, aka the multiple organisms for women, and like how women can look down and see breasts. And then for the men, the what was the line?
That men can pee standing up.
Right. Yes, that's the line. And so these are traits that they've deemed to be men traits and women traits, specifically regarding anatomy of men and women, and disregarding the existence of people outside of those categories, whether that's intersex people, trans people, etc.
Yeah, and so like the inherent, it essentially creates an inherent erasure of trans experiences, and inherently is oppressive, because what ends up happening is that, you know, it starts coming down to like, oh, well, men use this bathroom and have places to stand up to pee, and women have these kinds of bathrooms, and then, you know, people have to use them according to their anatomy, but then also it plays into what if you don't look like that, what the standard is in society to look like a male or look like a female, and you walk into the bathroom that either matches your anatomy or matches what you are most comfortable with or what you most identify walking into, and that creates some pretty intense actual like violence in society, whether it's like legal violence or physical violence against oftentimes trans women.
Totally. I actually feel that Phoebe is the only one who makes a comment about men that's not inherent to their physical body. So Phoebe says the line of how men can just do all these terrible things and not even care. You know? And like that to me is just such a, like, of course they gave Phoebe that line, you know? It like feels like such like a feminist revolutionary Phoebe line, you know? Men do all these things and they don't even care.
And like to the untrained eye or ear, that's like really just Phoebe being like random and weird. But in actuality, it's just so interesting because there's so much deeper into it, right? Like this is a socialized toxic mass. It's something that's targeting or addressing socialized toxic masculinity that exists in society, that is a real social issue.
And that comes up later in the episode.
Yeah, exactly. But in actuality, yes, like all people can be horrible and do horrible things, but and then not care. But this is actually like an actual repetitive thing that exists within the realm of like, toxic masculinity, which I think we'll kind of break down a little bit further into the episode.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
Okay. We want to talk about the individual storylines. Which of the storylines is your favorite storyline? So we have the laundry storyline with Ross and Rachel. We have the breakup storyline with Chandler and Phoebe going through their breakups. And then we have the date night tear apart a relationship storyline with Monica and Joey. Which one is your favorite?
I think I really like the Chandler and Phoebe storyline, mostly because I really like their rapport. This is a word I like to use. I don't know. I learned it and I love it. I just feel as though they're really different. Like Phoebe's kind of like soft and naive and gentle and innocent, and like Chandler's sarcastic and hard and awkward and weird. And like, well, Phoebe's also weird, but like, I just feel as though like Phoebe just has such like cute, soft intentions and always sees the good in people, and Chandler's just kind of like grumpy and all the time. And I like that in this episode, or in this like series of scenes, you kind of see them, or Phoebe kind of getting Chandler to see his soft side, and it's just this like cute little, I don't know, they're cute together. They're cute friends.
They are a cute little duo together. It's funny that you say that Phoebe is soft, because she's also the one that lived on the street, right? And she has such an edge to her at the same time.
I guess I mean soft in the sense that she's like trusting.
Yeah, I find it's so hard to pigeonhole Phoebe as any particular thing because I just feel like she's such a moving target. She is like a character made up of contradictions.
That's so true.
You know, she is like both like soft and gentle and scary and, and sharp, you know, like, and she's like naive and sweet and thinks the best of people, but also is like,
don't fuck with me.
Yeah, you know, and is like, yeah, she can be vindictive and yeah, I think, I mean, right now we're still getting to know her at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that she's a character made up of contradictions. And so it's hard to pigeonhole her, but in some way, Chandler is sort of a contrast to her, even though she's not one thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally get what you mean. They're an interesting duo, and despite Phoebe's weirdness in her own way, she at least has some sort of social ability, like social conduct ability, despite her like random things that she throws into like conversations. Yeah. And Chandler's, that's where he's the opposite. He's like easier at like making like easy jargon that doesn't mean anything in a conversation, but when it actually comes to like connecting with someone, that's where he struggles with. But do we want to sort of go through this storyline a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So Phoebe is breaking up with someone. Well, I actually really like that Chandler, the next scene after the cold open is Chandler being like, Saturday night, date night.
I know, it's good.
And it's just like...
Ross is like, don't you have to break up with Janice?
So good. Oh, man, yeah. And then Phoebe wants to break up with Tony, who we, again, don't know, but he's, like, obviously been in her life. And we also don't know Janice either, because she's never mentioned until this episode, but obviously has also been in Chandler's life. And because Tony has gone on a hunger strike. And so... Apparently isn't as fun anymore. That sucks.
What I had asked, or what we had asked on Instagram, was sort of like the debate between Joey and Chandler of like Chandler being like, I normally just like write a note and pass it over to the person to leave the restaurant before they finish reading it, and that's how I break up with people.
Funny.
And then Joey's like, be a man and stop calling, which
again,
we could break that down, but I hope we don't have to.
Be a man.
And
the patriarchy.
We asked on Instagram, what would you rather, be ghosted essentially, or get a note at the table from someone breaking up with you? And 100% of people said I'd rather the note, which totally makes sense. But I think what we should have asked...
Interesting.
What we should have asked is, would you have rather Chandler broken up with you with that note method or the way that he tries to break up with Janice? Because it is painful to watch.
Oh, man. Yeah, I definitely would prefer a note, though, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, at that point, like just get it out. You know,
like... Totally. But also, in a lot of ways, it depends on how long you've been dating someone. Because I answered this poll question, too, and I said a note. But, like, if you've only been on, like, 2 or 3 dates with someone... I would not feel comfortable if, like, I went to a restaurant with someone, I was there, I was gonna pay for my own food, I was, like, ready to, like, sit down and have an evening, and this person just, like, hands me a breakup note, and I have to sit there and, like, read it in front of this person who I've been on, like, 2 or 3 dates with. That would be awful. I'd rather they just stop calling at that point.
Well, would at that point a text count as a note?
No. Well, maybe it would be a text in like, maybe that's the equivalent nowadays. The 2020 equivalent of breaking up with someone via a note is breaking up with someone via a text.
Have you ever broken up with someone with a note?
I've broken up with someone via a long Facebook message.
Oh, wow.
But it's because I first tried to break up with them in person, and then they were shit about it.
Valid, then.
And then I wrote a long message, and then they never answered. But it's okay, because they were, like, emotionally abusive and terrible, so it's okay.
They deserved it.
They deserved it.
I think I've broken up with someone with a note or have been broken up with a note. It's all very vague. I remember like high school, vaguely sitting in some sort of a restaurant or a cafe. I don't know. I can't remember exactly, but I definitely think it's a part of my past.
Have you ever just stopped calling someone? Like ghosted someone, stopped messaging them or anything? I've been ghosted. It's not fun.
I wouldn't be surprised if I have accidentally ghosted someone.
Oh, that sounds like you, yeah.
I'm just so bad at
messages.
And yeah, keeping up with communication properly, like via the realm of like texting and emails and, you know, DMs and Facebook Messenger and WhatsApps that like I have a backlog of like pretty much like 20 messages at all times minimum. That I wouldn't be surprised if there was someone who was like pursuing me or maybe I went on one date with and then never really found the energy or the time to navigate properly communicating that I wasn't going to see them again.
That's brutal.
I'm sorry. Sorry if anyone's holding a grudge. I really
Someone's like
apologize.
Angrily listening to this podcast because they're mad that you ghosted them.
So we also asked the question, are you as bad as Chandler at breaking up with people on our Instagram poll? And 56% of people said yes.
Wow.
Which is a large amount of people.
That's pretty bad, guys.
Yeah, come on, guys. Like, Chandler has the bar pretty
low.
Pretty low!
Oh, man. I'm, like, yeah, except for that one time that I kind of had to break up with someone when it wasn't really a relationship. Like, I've never actually had to break up with someone. So it was never that bad that you were, like, sitting in a coffee house, couldn't find the words, throwing back, like, 10 to 15 espressos. Janice, you're like the bing, bing, bang, and I'm like the boom, boom, boom.
Which is not in the streaming version.
It is.
It is?
It's the other part that's not in the streaming version.
Okay, let's talk about that. So, I think that the Netflix or the streaming version of this episode does not do Janice justice.
Yeah, Janice is good.
Janice, in the breakup, is way more on it than in the streaming version. So, on the DVD, what the conversation that happens is Chandler saying that we need to break up. And she does the, oh my God. And then
she's crying.
And he's like, yeah, she's crying. And then he goes, this really isn't you, it's me. And she goes, I know it's you. It's your fear of commitment. And it's just like so on it of like calling him out for his shit. And
I'm so jealous of Phoebe's ability to break up with someone.
Yeah, what is up with that?
That's skills.
Okay, so
I want to know what she says. I want to be like, what is the magic phrase you use? Teach us all, Phoebe.
You know what's wild? Okay, I was so surprised by the answers for this poll, which was, have you ever had as simple of a breakup as this one that Phoebe has? And 30% of people said yes. I'm like, who are you? Can you please, like, DM us, tell us what you do. How do you
just broke up with someone by giving them a hug?
Well, I'm sure there's words exchanged.
Right.
But
I guess it depends. Like, this person was clearly not a long-term relationship. And remember, we already had this conversation in earlier podcasts about, like, dating in the 90s, where you kind of just, like, date someone by literally dating them, like, going on dates. It's not in the way that we date now, in which, like, within a few weeks, usually people are, like, integrated into your friend group, or they're already integrated in your friend group and then lines overlap, or, like traditional dates doesn't happen as much anymore with our generation, just with, like, Facebook and, like, being able to, like, text someone constantly when you're dating them versus, like, only going on individual dates with them. Like, I feel...
you're saying that you feel like it moves much slower?
Yeah, and so, like, after, like, 4 dates in the 90s, it's very different to break up with someone versus 4 dates, but you've been, like, maybe messaging them a lot, or you've been, like, texting them, or you're Facebook friends, and so you're, like, really active on each other's profiles. Like, so there's, like, a whole different web of ways to interact with someone when you're dating them that's not just, like, inherent to the actual times that you spend together.
Whoa. Man, dating has changed.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked a little bit already about how great Janice is, but I want to talk a little bit more about how great Janice is.
Okay.
Okay, 1, her voice. 2,
Not her real voice.
Not her real voice. Right. So, Maggie Wheeler, the actress who plays Janice, is putting on a voice. She used to be a voice actor.
Yeah, she started off in animation.
Yeah.
Go Google an interview with her.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's
totally
wild.
Different voice.
The one that we listened to, she actually like put on the voice and then also talked regularly, and you're just like, what's happening?
Yeah, it's great. She's great.
Very talented.
So her voice is amazing. Her hair is amazing. The curly, long, beautiful hair. Her outfit is amazing, and she was my number 1 outfit voter. She's got killer outfits through all of the times that we see her. I'm not going to say how many.
Yeah.
Or when. And I think that this outfit is very, like, more subtle, Janice. Like, it's like, you got, like, these knee-high boots, you've got this cute little skirt, she's wearing, like, a white shirt with, like, a black coat vest thing, whatever, on top, and, like, a beautiful necklace. And
really
she looks
big,
like,
chunky jewelry.
yeah. And she just looks so good. And then she buys Chandler socks. She buys Chandler
Oh my god, you guys, this
Bullwinkle socks. So you can wear Rocky and Rocky, or you can wear Bullwinkle and Bullwinkle, and you can mix and match. Moose and sock. Moose and squirrel.
This is true love, you guys.
Yeah.
This
It's
is
really cute.
true love.
It's so cute. Like, it's such a cute relationship thing when someone finds, like, a tiny thing about you that they know you like or that you have, and then they, like, give you something that, like, goes with it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's, like,
So thoughtful.
and it doesn't even need to be a romantic relationship thing. Like, our sister-in-law, Allie, on the first day of moving into her collective house, asked everyone what their favorite ice cream was, and then a few months later went out and bought them all their favorite ice cream on one day. That's so cute.
That is really cute.
Yeah. So,
You guys, the bar
good
really
friends.
isn't that high.
yeah.
Just, you
be
know,
better.
We all have to be better.
And then, of course, Janice's laugh, which is the best, too.
Yeah, Janice's laugh. Which I actually was just reading before we started recording this, that apparently in, like, some... I don't know the exactness of it, but apparently in a rehearsal, she was laughing at one of Chandler's jokes in her, like, kind of voice, but it wasn't what it is now. She actually slipped as she was laughing at Chandler's joke, and her laugh went into, like, the really weird nasal state, and then it was integrated into her character. So it was like a bit of, like, an accident of them finding that laugh.
Oh my god, that's so good.
Yeah, so it makes it even better.
That's really cute. There was nothing inherently problematic in this, I didn't feel. I felt as though, like, Chandler kind of sucks, but, like, not in a way that's, like, inherently oppressive. Like, he's just, like, not good at relationships, and he's, like...
Yeah, it's like it's just, like, the classic men not knowing how to do emotional labor.
Totally.
Because people are, like, men are not typically socialized to do that, and so him being useless and dragging out a breakup in a really painful way that it doesn't have to be. And then, you know, Phoebe, who you guys literally had, like, the worst of upbringings and, like, lived on the street, somehow still has more emotional labor because she's a woman and has been still socialized in this world to have better emotional labor capacity than Chandler, and is able to, like, turn around and help out and break up with Janice really easily in a way that's, like, super simple. And
interesting.
So
I didn't think of that.
I just find that interesting. It's like normalizing those stereotypes in a way that
normalizing men not having to do that communication work.
Yeah, and then women having to swoop in and clean that up for them, which is another thing that happens a lot in this whole series.
And then women being told that they're too emotional.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Okie dokie.
All right, so, laundromat scene or Monica and Joey?
Monica and Joey.
Okay, this is weird.
There's so... Yeah.
There's so much here.
I don't even know how to start.
It's just weird. Like, Joey, how could Joey not know that this was gonna blow up in his face? But I think that this is like a classic sitcom move. Someone thinks something is one way, but it's actually the other way. That episode of Three's Company with some kind of misunderstanding. Like, it's like that episode of Friends with some kind of misunderstanding. You know? So, like, this idea that Joey is gonna try to break up this couple. Anyways, let's talk about Angela. Do you want to talk about Angela?
Yeah, I do, because she's a boss. When she's like,
boss.
When he's like, you look great. And she's like, that's because I'm wearing a dress that accents my boobs.
She's a babe and she knows it.
I love it. It's so good.
So good.
Like, that is some, I mean, it's done in a way that it's supposed to be comical. So it's just hard to tell with these things. Like, is it good? Because, like, that's some really great representation there of, like, a woman knowing that she's a babe, being okay with being a babe, being okay with being forward that, yeah, I know I'm a fucking babe.
Yeah.
But then there's also the side that it is a comical thing. People are laughing at the situation. Like, that's clearly not how people are supposed to act, quote unquote, in the air kind of thing. But I love it.
Yeah, me too. It's also like, I literally was reading a review of this episode and someone was like, Angela's trashy. And you're like, is Angela trashy? Or like, are you trashy? Like, because like, Angela's just like, I hate that idea that like, men can call women beautiful, but the moment a woman calls herself beautiful or recognizes her attractiveness, then she's like slutty or she is like full of herself or conceited. And it's like, no, she recognizes that she's a babe and she's owning it. And Joey missed out. She even says to him, she's like, you said we should just be friends. So guess what? We're just friends. Like, Angela's a boss.
Like, okay, I wrote a note here. Okay, because I was like, didn't even know where to start breaking this down. And what I wrote was, Joey lies to Monica to break up a past sexual partner that he only wants because he can't have her, and then continues to lie to Monica and wouldn't have told her if she hadn't figured it out herself.
Yeah.
And then continues to break up a couple.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
it's not great.
There's so many things there, including lying to your friend. Like, to be honest, in this situation, that's the part that I have the biggest issue with.
Again, it's one of those things where, like, they obviously did that for comedy purposes, right? Like, that's one of those things that, like, to me, and maybe you're going to disagree with me, which will be great banter for our podcast, but I think that in a sitcom, you need a certain amount of, like, not great relationships. Because that's what creates a story, that's what creates the jokes, that's what creates that, right? So, like, I think that in this case, I don't actually really have a problem with the fact that Joey lies to Monica. Like, if it was a real friend life situation, not valid. But for the purpose of, like, plot line on a show, I think it's funny and I think it's well scripted and well done, you know?
Yeah.
The, like, breaking up the couple is more of the, like, awkward part of it. You know, it's like, and then I think like my instinct is like, what if they were poly? And then maybe it wouldn't have to be a matter of breaking people up, but being like, hey, I'm attracted to these two people. Maybe we should talk about our boundaries and talk about what kind of relationship we want to have.
I mean, they don't have to be poly, they can just be swingers.
That too.
So,
except Monica and Joey aren't actually together.
Yeah, that's true.
Don't forget that.
Although, fun fact that I have recently discovered that fits in perfectly right here. Apparently, in the original writing of the script, the main love interest was supposed to be between Joey and Monica.
Wow, way to give spoilers that doesn't happen.
Sorry. On Instagram, we surveyed people.
Okay.
You lovely people who answered. And the question was, have you ever tried to break a couple up?
I hope the answers were no.
10% said yes.
Who are you? This is sneaky. I want to know. Okay, but there's different things. Is it because you want to break a couple up because, like, you want to keep the pieces for yourselves, as Monica says? Or is it you want to break them up because you feel as though they're like in a shitty, toxic, abusive relationship and you don't think it's good for either people and therefore you're trying to encourage them to not be together?
Right. I feel like that's different.
It's very different.
I did get a message from lovely Sid. Thank you for your feedback, Sid. But the feedback was, I've tried to break up people with my mind powers, but that has never worked. Which I think is super valid, because that's a completely different, like, I think it's very common that people will be like, those people shouldn't be together. And then you, like, think the thing, whether it's, like, a celebrity couple or... Okay, another question that pertains to this storyline.
Mm-hmm.
Did your sibling tell you when they lost their virginity? And there was a star next to lose their virginity. Because let's take a moment to talk about what virginity is as a concept. And that it is
we didn't talk about that last episode, which is the whole time when...
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, because virginity is a construct.
Virginity is a construct because
Just
so
gender.
often it's very much very much framed as like a hetero cis thing, I guess, in the sense of like losing your virginity is the idea of a penis entering a vagina, right? Versus all the other ways that a person can have sex.
Or be sexually active.
And if, like, you know, someone is a lesbian with a vagina and dates only people who have vaginas, then there will never be a penis entering a vagina, and therefore that loss of virginity, quote-unquote virginity, never actually happens, right? So it's a construct, and it's a problem.
But also, in the past, it has been used a lot as a tool against women. Like the concept of like the hymen is very false in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And essentially like valuing someone based on whether or not they're a virgin usually only applies to women. Again, talking about like in a cis hetero realm. So that's the reason we put it in quotation marks, or in a little star next to it. And 45% of people said that they did tell their sibling did tell them. And 55% said no. Okay, the last thing that I want to talk about in this, or that I want to prioritize talking about in this, is what is up with Bob's hair?
This bothered you so much. Okay, podcast people, Quinn has been talking about Bob's hair for so long, and like, I don't understand, because to me it's not that bad. It's like a 90s haircut, whatever. And Quinn is like, we have to make a poll question about Bob's hair. Bob's hair is ridiculous. What is this hair?
It looks like a Ken doll hair. And it looks like, okay, let's put this into perspective. Everyone is giving Ross a really hard time for his hair, always throughout this series. And then you have people like Bob, and you're just like, and then he's called like dreamy or something like that. And you're like, Ross's hair is way better than Bob's hair. Like,
interesting. Yeah, but it's also like very luxurious, and like I kind of want to know what conditioner he uses.
I think it's more hairspray. I think hairspray is the thing that is making his hair.
It doesn't look like crickly. It looks like flowy.
But it doesn't move. It literally, he moves and the hair does not move. The hair does not wave in the wind. It is like a plastic little toupee.
There's no wind in the restaurant.
Whatever.
I'm gonna go look at this not moving hair. A plastic toupee. Oh man, that's rough. Alright. Let's talk about the next scene.
My favorite storyline.
Cute. Ross and Rachel.
Ross and Rachel go do their laundry.
First, I want to talk about Ross talking to Rachel, and Rachel being like, oh, I've got big plans for Saturday night. Monica and I are doing laundry at Laundorama. There's a moment where Ross does, again, one of his most incredible acting moments, where he's just like, you know, like he's like trying to be cool and smooth, but he can't, and he like stops and hesitates and pauses, and the bloopers for that scene is just really ridiculous because he can't get it out, and it's such a good moment. I love that. They're going in fine, but they're coming out fuzzy. all fluffy, that's what it is.
Yeah, I agree. They just both of these actors are just really good at what they do.
Mm-hmm. And
And then when you put them together, there is a real chemistry there that just works. They can play off of each other really well.
totally.
And Ross, again, just acting with his whole body. You know, season 1 Ross, I actually really love season 1 Ross.
Me too.
Season 1 Ross
I wrote a
is
note about that too.
the best Ross.
Yeah. He's like kind, he's sensitive, he's like a little bit more vulnerable, and he's also willing to show people he's a bit more vulnerable, whereas like I think he puts up a few guards after that, you know? And I really like whoever was writing Ross's character in season 1. I'm really on board with him.
Yeah.
I think he's great. And then he even, because later on in like his apartment, he's getting ready to go to like, you know, go out to do laundry, and Chandler's like, "Oh, Monica's not going. Like, you know this is a date, right?" And you're just like, "No, Chandler, it's not a date." Because
yes.
even in the DVD version, they cut it out in the Netflix version, but in the DVD version, Ross literally says, "But is it a date if she doesn't know it's a date?" And Chandler goes, "Yeah." Ross is like questioning Chandler's understanding of this, you know? Ross is like, "No, this isn't a date. She doesn't know it's a date," you know? And Chandler's like, "Yes, it's a date," which doesn't make any sense. Stupid.
It's really frustrating. And it's, as someone who has experienced many times going out with someone and then finding out it's a date while you're there, or finding out afterwards that it was a date,
Or that they thought it was a date.
or the best one of it all is when you explicitly say that it is not a date, that you do not want it to be a date, and somehow people don't get the message.
Yeah.
And to them, it's a date.
Also, it plays into the idea that we were talking about like last week. Well, not exactly what we were talking about last week, but the idea that like women can't do anything ever without men thinking it's for them or to benefit them. Like in the sense of like, it just sucks to want to hang out with a dude just to be friends with them. Actually, this plays into our conversation that we had about the friend zone. This like, you know, wanting to hang out with someone because you want to hang out with them. You think they have a good personality, et cetera, et cetera. And then like usually men like believe that it's a date or that it's an opportunity to date someone. And this idea of like always having to be on guard and making sure that this guy's not hitting on you. Like always making sure when you're in like a social setting, a group setting, being like, is this person hitting on me? Or are they like respecting my boundaries? You know? And that's like not fun.
Yeah. And it's just like, how clear do you have to be?
Oh my God, yeah.
In order for, like, I don't think that it should fall on a woman's shoulders or any femme person's shoulders to have to explicitly say every single time that it is not a date. Mm-hmm. You know, there's just like this inherent belief in this hetero patriarchal world that like if a quote unquote man and a quote unquote woman are going to be alone together, then they're going to be it's sexual, or it's a date, or it's an interest thing, or it could go somewhere. Yeah. There's the possibility for there to be sex, and it's just like, you know.
Ross also has another cute moment where he's like, "What's wrong with my snuggles?" And you're like, "Ross, there's nothing wrong with your snuggles. You could be as snuggly as you want to be, because men don't need to have to be manly all the time. You know, it's not, you don't."
And how is snuggly not a manly thing? It's just, yeah, it's just.
Manly was in quotation marks when I said it, for the record. You can't see.
No, we can't. Yeah, I think that this is another example of like how toxic masculinity hurts men. And it's like, why can't Ross fully express who he is as a person? The fact that he likes to use fabric softener. Mm-hmm. Like, it's great. Good on you, Ross, for, except for I hear fabric softener is like the worse for the environment.
Yeah.
But outside of that, like...
But he wants his clothes to be snuggly.
Yeah.
That's valid. I want my clothes to be snuggly.
Who doesn't want their partner to have clothing that is snuggly?
Yeah.
You know?
Doesn't make any sense.
Like, if you're going to date someone...
Be snuggly.
Very possibly, there are people who don't, but there's possibly people who like snuggles and want... Anyway, whatever. I'm just going on.
Yeah.
And so then he replaces it with a laundry detergent that he picks up along the way. And it's called Uberweiss. And apparently it actually translates to overly white.
Uber usually means like super.
Right.
So like super white. Which
is unfortunate if you have clothing that are not supposed to be white.
And also, it's a really great way to represent this show in general. Because this is the second episode in a row where there's not a single person of color.
Okay. I want to lean over into this sort of secondary character that really helps create the storyline at the laundromat.
And who is cast as the horrible woman. That is her name in the cast.
Lovely.
The horrible woman. Yeah.
Emily, you pointed out something really interesting in our last episode that we're already starting to see as a pattern one episode later.
Which is the representation of fat people who are always represented as being villains or rude or bad people. And so in this case, she's literally called the horrible woman. You know, it's one of those moments where it's like, it's not explicit. It's not like they're making an inherent fat joke. You know, well, they do make that line of like, oh, I used to have a 24-inch waist, but things change. But like, it's like a microaggression of fat phobia. You're constantly being exposed to fat people in media who are the villains or who are bad or who are like mean or rude. And it just happens way too often. There's not enough representation of fat or bigger people in media in which they have like nuanced, interesting aspects about them. They're just like usually funny, there for comedic relief, or rude.
Defined by their body size.
Yeah. Their fatness. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No suds, no save.
No suds, no save. Which, if anyone who listens to this has used a laundromat before, I know for a fact that that's not the case. And also, most of the time, people are a lot nicer at laundromats, in my experience. No matter how dingy and gross they are.
Yeah, so as someone who has done their laundry in a laundromat, because I've always been, you know, blessed with living in places where the washer and dryer, or at least the washer, is in the building. What's like the rules around this stuff?
In my experience...
Basket on top? Does that count as a save?
Yeah, usually like, if you come in and put your basket on top of a laundry machine... and you go to get detergent like Rachel was doing, no one's going to take your machine. Mm-hmm. Also, though, I will say that most of the laundry mats that I have used have been a lot bigger than the one that they were in New York. But also, I will say that in my experience, Saturday night is a really great time to go do your laundry because a lot of people are not doing their laundry on Saturday night. Mm-hmm. Usually Sundays are a really busy day for laundry.
Right, getting ready for
or Mondays. Day. Yeah. So it's a little surprising that a Saturday night was so busy at the laundromat.
But isn't like every night busy in New York? Isn't that like a common...
That's true. I've never done my laundry in New York. So...
Again, if you've done your laundry in New York, let us know your experience at a New York laundromat. We need more New York friends.
I know, right? We have a few. We should reach out to them.
That's true. Did you ever, when you first started doing laundry, think that you needed to separate your laundry into pants and shirts?
Oh my god. No.
So cute.
But also, like...
I still don't know how to separate my laundry.
We also grew up in a family that, like... I don't know about you, but I started doing my laundry while I was still living here. We are currently at our parents' place, guys.
We're back here in the pandemic. We're here. It's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, what? West Island.
Woo-woo. Yeah, see, I was the baby of the family. Mom did my laundry for way too long.
You were the baby of the family.
And I still ask Mom laundry questions. But, like, I could do it without her, and I've done it without her, because, like, I moved out at 19. I was doing my laundry without her for many years. But, like, when I'm back here, I feel like I have to like double check with her about things. Like I'm like, I know what I wash in cold water and hot water, etc. But is there like a more optimal way to do my laundry? So I asked Mom like what the optimal way is for me to do my laundry. Because I would not just split up my stuff. Like Ross has 3 categories. He's like delicates, your panty-like things, delicates, and then he says whites and darks. But like that's not the only way that I split up laundry. Like I definitely wash underwear separate from socks. I can wear like
you are Mom's child.
like towels is a whole other category. You wouldn't wash towels with other things. Well, maybe you would. Depends on how many towels you have. But then again, if you're just one person washing your own laundry, I guess you do smaller loads.
And then also when you're paying for laundry at a laundromat, you definitely do it differently. Yeah. Because every load is money. It's expensive. Mm-hmm. When Rachel holds up her underwear after Ross explaining to her the different categories, she's like, well, would this go in delicates or white in the whites? And it's funny because I think that is such a relatable question because I remember when I first started doing laundry, that was the big stinker. Like, what do you do with the whites? Like, is it going to get colors in it if I put... Anyway,
It was a 50-50 response. 50% of people are putting their white cotton panties in whites. 50% are putting them in delicates. So there is no right answer. Is the conclusion.
Although I know for a fact someone who voted there puts all of their laundry into one load, so...
That's interesting. It's a great way to save water. But also, okay, the thing of putting your red sock into, like, a thing of whites, if you washed your stuff on cold water, it's unlikely that red sock would have leached into the whites.
Yeah.
So just in case, because I have anxiety and I always worry that this is going to happen, I just wash everything in cold water.
Great. You're doing so good for the environment.
Thanks.
It's good stuff. Keep it up.
And I don't think in the polls, I don't think anyone had... Oh yeah, 40% of people have said they've turned their whites into pink. And 60% said no. So I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry that you will look like a marshmallow peep. But as Phoebe says, all your stuff will match, and it's great.
I love how Phoebe just turns that around at the end.
Oh, it's so good.
Okay, I want to also point out how one of the things that I really love about this storyline is that it's kind of a continuation of last week's episode, where Rachel is having this breakdown of like, can I do this or not?
Right.
It's like right along in her story of like her self-development of figuring herself out in the city. Mm-hmm. And so last week it's like she got her first paycheck and she's doubting herself. She doesn't know if she can do this. Yeah. And then she realizes she has magic beans. So cute. And then this week she's now faced with having to do laundry and she's again doubting herself, which is like really nice to see because I feel like it's very real. It's like, it's such a real process of like going off and wanting to do something for yourself. And it doesn't mean that you'll just like, feel confidence in yourself or feel like you've made the decision like yes or no all of the time. It's really a back and forth of doubting yourself, but wanting to do it, being consistent and pushing yourself and being out of your element. And it's hard. And so here again, her dad is like trying to bribe her to come back home. And that's really tempting. What was it? A Lamborghini or something that he's tempting her with?
Yeah. A convertible or something. I think he just says.
Yeah. And so,
it's also such an interesting concept. The idea of like emotional support versus financial support. Like it's
oh my god.
The idea of like being able to be financially supported. Like if something happens to Rachel and she can't make it on her own in New York, like she has a place to go. She has somewhere to go. But at the same time, her family is completely and totally not emotionally supporting her journey and this, which sucks. It really sucks. But on the flip side, it's just such a privilege in so many ways, being in this. And I like to think a lot of the idea of like being broke versus poor, the idea that like poverty is like usually intergenerational. Usually it's based on like family wealth. It's based on...
It's systemic
as well. It's systemic. Yeah, totally. versus like when you're broke, it's more along the lines of like, you could technically borrow money, or you could technically, go move back in with family. You're not going to be like on the street if you can't pay rent. I hear so many conversations where people use the word poor when they're actually talking about being broke, and then use the word broke when they're actually talking about poverty. And I just don't think that it's the same thing. And I think that like, at the end of the day, Rachel has a lot of privilege, and Rachel will be okay financially. But on the flip side, not having an emotional support from people who you love, who you care about, who you grew up with, is really, really hard.
And even to take this one step further, again, having that financial privilege is and always will be a privilege. Mm-hmm. But we're also looking at her father trying to control her with money, right? Mm-hmm. And you step into the realm of like financial abuse is also a real thing and a real form of abuse that exists. Yeah. Trying to play into like codependency and so it's like this complex realm of being coming from money is a financial privilege. She clearly had opportunities that many people will never actually ever be able to conceptualize for themselves, and was given so much support. And at the end of the day, if she needed to, she has somewhere to go. Yeah. But at the same time, having to struggle with the fact that you have that privilege, but also it comes with another certain price of kind of like a toxic relationship there as well.
Her father, yeah. Especially like her father literally saying, you're not up to this, and this kind of, it's a very controlling, manipulative way to have your child, do what you want. Like literally bribing her with... Yeah, it's like in a lot of ways, like I literally wrote in my notes, #rich people problems. But in another side of it, it's like, it sucks. It sucks not having emotional support from the people who raised you. Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot about this in terms of like, and I know this isn't the case at all, and maybe we can get rid of this after I say it, but I think a lot of the idea of like, queer and trans people growing up with money, and like people who have this financial support and then are stripped of that financial support because of their identity or because of the choices that they make, and therefore grow up with this amount of privilege and then don't have that privilege anymore because of choices they decide to make, and then like being excommunicated from their community or their family, et cetera, and like. Yeah, and the harm that causes, and the financial abuse involved in that.
Yeah, that's very real.
Doesn't apply to Rachel, but I just...
No, it doesn't apply to Rachel, but also we can flip back to Rachel and further talk about, like, the life that she was choosing, right, was to go from her family or her dad being financially supportive of her and her having no real means to support herself in any way, like having no skills or abilities to be on her own. And then the plan was for her to be then passed on to her husband, who was then going to be her financial support. And this is really where this sort of patriarchal system creates the ability for like a ripe situation for abuse, right? Because so like her just being passed on to a husband who's supposed to be her main form of support, main way of getting any sort of financial support. And then on top of that, her clearly having no real life skills in any way whatsoever. It just creates an environment that is ripe for any type of abuse, and for her to not be able to leave because she doesn't have a support system outside of that existence. And then if you add kids to that mix, that makes it even harder to leave, because how are you supposed to like support a bunch of kids and go off and get out of an abusive relationship? Totally. And so lots of financial privilege, and there's no taking that away. That is a reality, but we can also see it. There's so many other problematic things that stem in and out of it.
Yeah. I also, like moving that further actually, and the idea of her like starting to learn life skills, starting to be on her own, and like being able to tackle laundry on her own. And then I actually really enjoy, despite my issues with this horrible woman that they've created, quote unquote horrible woman that they've created, like the way that at the beginning of the storyline, you know, she's kind of just like, oh, I don't really know how anything works. Like, I'm just gonna step back, you know, like I'm not gonna stand up for myself. Like, I'm not sure what my role is here, how to play this. So I'm just gonna take a step back. And then like kind of Ross saving her, quote unquote, at the beginning and like standing up for her in that scene and being like, don't make up rules, you know, it's not no suds, no save. Like her basket was on top. And then that translating to afterwards, not Ross saving her again, but rather her standing up for herself and recognizing that she does have these skills and she does have this strength and being able to not be a pushover. And again, it plays into this character development that happens throughout all 10 seasons of Friends, where Rachel starts to come into her own. And I think that you start to see a few of the seeds of this in these episodes. Rachel starting to be like, actually, I can take care of myself. Like, I have this capability. And you kind of watch Rachel get strong and get capable and get great.
It's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, totally. Oh, I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
How do you feel about the Rachel kiss to Ross?
I know you brought this up earlier outside of this recording, and I don't know. I don't know if it was the other way around. I would be a little bit more, what the F?
See, this is my thing, okay? This is where I feel as though toxic masculinity and the patriarchy can harm men too, again. I know we keep talking about this, and it's annoying. But in the sense of like consent so often is forgotten about when it comes to men, like as if men always want women to kiss them. Men always want women to want to have sex with them. And then it kind of removes men's autonomy over their own sexuality. And this idea that like, and you so often see it with tropes about like an older school teacher and a young boy, you know, and this idea that like obviously that boy would be so happy, that 16 or 17-year-old boy would be so happy that a 25 or 28-year-old teacher is hitting on him because men want sex and men want this. And then it completely removes the fact that that's not okay and the consent involved in that situation. So always assuming, and this is a trope that happens all the time in Friends, is like always assuming that men want to have sex is really, really harmful and removes consent from that situation. And so in this case, it's confusing because we know that Ross does want to kiss Rachel, right? And so we know that, you know, he is happy about that kiss, but Rachel doesn't know that Ross would be happy about that kiss. And also it plays into the idea of like, I don't think Rachel was kissing him in a romantic sense. It was a very much like a friend sense, like, oh my God, I'm so happy, I want to kiss you.
Yeah.
And so it was like this cute little moment of like joy that Rachel was experiencing and wanting to share it. Mm-hmm. But like, she wouldn't have kissed Monica.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it. It's a very weird moment. I don't know why they scripted it, because I also feel like it's very out of Rachel's character, because I feel like Rachel's like really awkward when it comes to dating things sometimes, and like I feel like it was so not something Rachel would do.
Yeah. Trying to like get into Rachel's shoes in the position, like there's a part of me that wonders if it's like he had said that, like, is it okay if I ask you out sometime? Mm. And then she's in that moment where she's like so grateful to him, where she's like, wow, you really empowered me and I can do this, and maybe a point of like kind of like gratitude, but again, that being problematic to assume that men are always open to and wanting to have like some sort of sex or, you know, physical contact in that way. And, you know, her just like kissing him. Mm-hmm. as like a form of like gratitude to him.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like a part of me that like wonders if like in that moment she was genuinely feeling like that connection with him and wanting and being like, this guy, like I am my best self around this person. Like maybe this is who I want to be with, you know, like having that moment, that flash. But it's funny because when we laughed at this scene, I almost like wanted to be like, well, no wonder Rachel has no idea that he's into her, because immediately he like away. Freaks out a little bit, is awkward, and his reaction to the kiss, like to me, if that had happened and someone like reacted in that way, I probably would have been like, oh, I crossed the line. This person clearly is uncomfortable with what I just did.
Yeah.
Like, won't do that again, and like will not see this person in that way. And I just find that funny.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, it's definitely a tough cookie, because it's like,
well, and in general, just don't kiss people randomly. Like,
yeah, don't kiss. But again, then it plays into this idea of like I'm married, you know, and there's times where like I do check in with my partner about whether or not I can kiss them, depending on how the vibes that are coming off of them. But I've also been with them for so long, been with him for so long, that like I don't always have to ask him if I have to kiss him. You know what I mean? Versus like, and that's a relationship that we've established and we feel comfortable with and we both feel safe with, and we're respecting each other's boundaries, right? But I believe that you can also have that kind of relationship with a friend. I believe that you can kiss a friend and not have it be romantic, like platonic kiss a friend. And so what does that mean in terms of the Rachel and Ross relationship?
But clearly, though, from his reaction, they have not established that type of relationship.
Yeah.
So
it's
like what you're saying makes sense,
yeah.
But it's clear that it does not apply to the situation.
Yeah. It's just a pickle. And so let us know what you feel about it, because it's a questionable kiss. Do you feel like it's out of Rachel's character? Do you feel like Ross reacted well? Do you feel like it was a good moment for a kiss? Do you feel like it was a random kiss? Tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, let us in.
Yeah. So that's it, I guess.
Okay, so on that note, I think we can wrap it up on that question.
Yeah, totally. So if you want to answer that question, or if you want to ask us questions, or if you want to tell us anything that's going on with this episode or next episode, things you want to hear from us, you can find us on Instagram at WT Phalange. That's PHALANGE. Or you can send us an email at WTPhalange@gmail.com. And we will be getting a website up soon, but we'll let you know when that happens.
I also want to say, go check us out on Instagram, because I'm going to post up all the emojis that people described Bob's hairs with.
Excellent. That's great.
And then if you want to contact us individually directly, you can find me, Quinn, on Instagram at the handle Kanien'kehá, or at Mindbody with Quinn. And then you'll find my website and everything as a connection from there. But if you don't have Instagram, check out my website. It's just quinnkbrunette.com.
And you can find me, Emily, on Instagram or Facebook at Emily B Yoga. That's Emily EMILIE. Or on my website, www.emilyByoga.com. And as we mentioned last week, we will be starting to do some online fitness and yoga classes. Those will be starting on Monday, July 13th. We'll have the schedule on my website, so go to my website, check it out, and hopefully you can start practicing and doing some movement, body positive, queer, trans positive, wonderful positive fitness and movement and yoga classes online.
And you'll find all of this information in the show notes. See you on Instagram.
We'll see you on Instagram. That's it.